Hebrew Vision Live. Hallelujah. Again, that's Let My People Go by Sister Nakia Bat Yahuda, featuring the brother Nehemiah, Sister Yaleah, and yours truly, Mikael Corbin Yahu. You're listening live here to Hebrew Vision Live. This broadcast is every Yom Hamashi, what we know in the Gregorian tongue of Thursday, from 6 to 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. We do this every week. And before we go ahead and continue, let us enter into a spirit of prayer as we get into Two to the Dome tonight with Brother Paul Scott, who will be joining us in the second hour of this broadcast. And so in the spirit of prayer, hallelujah, hallelujah, and hallelujah. Blessed and great are you, Yah our Elohim, the Elohim of Abraham, the Elohim of Isaac, the Elohim of Jacob, creator of heaven, earth, sea, and all that is in them. Abba, we give you all praises and all esteem, for to you truly those are due. To us, however, Heavenly Father, belongs the shame of faith. Therefore, we confess our sins and our trespasses before you, asking for your mercies to be extended, and that you cause our hearts to be circumcised, so that we may truly turn back and be healed. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the life that you have endowed us with, and for allowing us to see yet another day and to continue to breathe the breath of life. Abba, we ask that you guide our spirits and our minds and our hearts for these next few hours, and that you allow us to see what your word is showing us in this particular day, in this particular hour. Abba, we ask that you just inspire us and that you cover us and protect us, your children, the people of your covenant, and that you continue to awaken us, Heavenly Father, and cause us to come back to the Torah and to be conformed into the image of your Son, who is the Torah made flesh. Abba, we pray these things not because we're worthy, but we ask that you receive our prayers in the name of your Son, who is our King, who is our prophet, who is our high priest, who is our bridegroom, our kinsman redeemer, Mashiach Yahushua, Baruch Hashem, hallelujah, Vimeru, amen. So once again, this is Mikael Corbin Yahu, here live with you in Hebrew Vision Live. And again, this broadcast is called Two to the Dome. We're going to be having Truth Minister Paul Scott joining us at the second hour of this show, who will be sharing some of his vision and his views and some of what he's been doing in his hometown for a while. But this evening, I just want to kind of prime our audience and just contextualizing some of the events that have taken place in light of the presidential selection of Donald J. Trump. And we know that this has been a very hot topic. Along with that, you have the rise of the alt-right or neo-Nazis, Klans, white Confederates, the extreme nationalists, the race warriors or race soldiers, if you want to call them that. And their ideology is spreading like a wildfire throughout the world now that conference took place this past Shabbat in Washington, D.C., in the Ronald Reagan, very apt location for their particular conference. And so this is not just an isolated trend that is taking place in the United States. This is a global phenomenon. We can see this in Europe most expressly. And I want to read a few articles and just really enlighten the people, the listeners, to what's developing. Because these are very, very serious and very, very crucial times to just have an awareness of what is going on in the world around us. And so our first article comes to us from Foreign Policy in Focus. It is by a John Pfeffer. He wrote this on November 23rd. The name of the article is What Europe Can Teach Us About Trump. And I think it's very important to connect these dots and to look at this internationally. This is a very geopolitical development with whoever comes into the office of president to carry out the role of the institution, the role of the hidden government, of the oligarchs, of the powers that be behind the scenes that the media will never speak of. These are the hidden hands. These are the black nobility. These are dealing with, of course, the Vatican and the other Council of Foreign Relations, Bilderberg, Trilateral Commission agencies and or organizations that we'll get into this evening. We're going to read an article that's going to connect those dots and bring those out into the forefront. But he subtitles and says, as America braces itself for the landfall of Hurricane Trump, it's instructive to look to Europe or look at Europe's populist leaders, for they hold clues to our future or to America's future. The populist leaders. And we'll get into what populism is all about as well. Very interesting political term. So Donald Trump, he might seem like a uniquely American phenomenon. The shape-shifting billionaire huckster reinvented himself first as a TV personality and then as a maverick populist politician. A populist is one who attends to the popular ideas, okay? And to be more specific, when we look this word up politically, a populist is one who uses very, very interesting strategies and tactics to reach the ordinary people. Okay, these are the common folks, and he appealed to them, to their politics. That does not mean that he's going to actually deliver the promises of the campaign to them, but it's just relating to the doctrine that stems from a point that struggle is between two different groups, the people, the populace, the population, and the ruling faction. So he presented himself as someone who would drain the swamp. But we'll see how this turns out. So he rolled to power on patriotic slogans, "Make America Great Again," and tailored his policy prescriptions to specific American constituencies like West Virginia coal miners and Michigan factory workers. He spoke to very particular American anxieties about immigration, crime, and guns. You can find traces of Trump in American history. Andrew Jackson is a type of a Trump, okay, in the past, the populist mindset. Huey Long. In American literature, you can also read some Elmer Gantry and Lonesome Rose. Not to say that I'm familiar with those individuals. Andrew Jackson and Huey Long, of course, former presidential candidates. I'm somewhat familiar with them. Donald Trump practically screams America. And yet, Trump is nothing new. Europeans have been dealing with their own mini-Trumps for decades. Silvio Berlusconi also began his career in Italy as a real estate agent or real estate mogul, and that was before becoming a billionaire media mogul. A womanizer and right-wing populist who promised to create 1 million jobs, Berlusconi led his Forza Italia party to victory more than 20 years ago in 1994. He would eventually serve as prime minister in 4 governments. He didn't follow through on his promise to create 1 million jobs. In fact, the Italian economy sank deeper into debt and corruption, and Berlusconi became mired in a succession of scandals. Maybe a prelude to what is about to happen in America? Silvio Berlusconi was, as The Economist put it indelicately, the man who screwed an entire country. Those are big shoes for Trump to fill. Further Eastern Europe, Poland, Hungary, and Slovakia have all produced their own mini-Trumps over the years. As America braces itself for the landfall of Hurricane Trump, it's instructive to look at the trajectory of these populist leaders, for they hold clues to America's future. Hungary, the political swingers. Viktor Orban started out his political life as a liberal. He helped found the Alliance of Young Democrats, which is called Fidesz, in Budapest in 1988. As communism began to crumble in Hungary in 1989, the new movement promised to be radical, liberal, and alternative. Fidesz introduced a playful note in the 1990 election. One particularly striking, if heteronormative campaign poster from that year showed 2 pictures of a kiss between 2 communist dinosaurs, Leonid Brezhnev and Erich Honecker, and between 2 young, attractive Hungarians. "Make your choice," read the inscription. Fidesz captured nearly 9% of the vote that year. Today, Fidesz is no longer liberal or alternative. It's no longer the party of young people, and it is far from irreverent. After a steady march to the right led by current Prime Minister Viktor Orban, it has become the party of orthodoxy. It was completely unexpected what happened in Hungary, where an already consolidated liberal democracy went backwards toward an autocratic or hybrid regime, says Hungarian sociologist András Bozoki. It never before happened in the EU that a country suddenly made a U-turn back from democracy towards some kind of half-democracy. When Austrians elected the Haider Party, there was a huge protest in the EU. There was also a marginalization of Berlusconi. But none of these people had a 2/3 majority in the parliament, so they couldn't change the Constitution. Wow. Is that something that is being sought, to change the Constitution? And with the Republicans now having dominance in the House and Senate, and of course, they're now seeking to put someone in the judicial branch, where we know that the laws, the legislative branch, is sold up. Is their aim to change the Constitution and revert back to a former particular way of life? Or is it to be progressive and move forward and to put America in a more noble and dignified position? Well, let's continue on with this article, see where Europe is going. After winning more than 50% of the vote in both 2010 and 2014, Fidesz can pass any legislation it wants. When the country's constitutional court has overturned key Fidesz laws, the party simply achieved its goal by changing the Constitution, which it has done 4 times, recalling the apocryphal story of the Paris bookseller who, when asked for a copy of the French Constitution after World War II, answered that he didn't traffic in periodical literature. It became obsolete. It became irrelevant because of the transformations that the Fidesz party in Hungary changed the Constitution. They brought forth a new one. Continuing on, listen to this. Orbán moved to the right less because of ideological conviction than because of political opportunity. In Hungary, the main liberal party, the Alliance of Free Democrats, and the former communist, the Socialist Party, teamed up to form a coalition government on 2 occasions. Orbán was furious at what he perceived as a betrayal by his liberal brethren. The Liberal Socialist Coalition, meanwhile, implemented harsh economic reforms and became notorious for its corruption. And there's already a scandal on the table in Argentina with Trump because of a project that he had started building there was on halt for various reasons. Just recently was given the green light to go and continue and finish after a phone call that he had with the country's president. So there are now questions of political strings that may have been pulled in order to allow this personal project to take place. So we're going to look at some national interest and personal interest in this matter. A government is to pursue the public interest. But if we see personal and private interests going forth, well, that's where corruption, that's where scandals, and that's where misappropriation of funds comes into the entire picture. Continuing on. The discrediting of the liberal left on economic grounds presented Orbán with the means to regain power in 2010. Fidesz hammered on its populist themes. Average people were not benefiting from economic reforms. The elite had partnered with foreign interests against the nation. Minorities, Roma, immigrants were dragging the country down into lawlessness. Sound familiar? Like Trump, the Fidesz's take on the economy is all over the map. It is railed against international bankers, even as it imposes various neoliberal reforms. Orbán is primarily interested in what economists call state capture. The ruling party is using the state apparatus to direct benefits, jobs, contracts, payments to all its supporters. If the Hungarian government renationalizes utilities or banks, it is not because of some fundamental belief that the state benefits from controlling the commanding heights of the economy. Rather, Fidesz simply wants more power in its hands and more spoils to distribute. The Hungarian public is not oblivious to this corruption. Indeed, according to its poll in July, 2/3 of Hungarians believe that Fidesz is very corrupt. Even 1/3 of Fidesz supporters feel that way. In October, the government closed down a major opposition newspaper and sponsored an anti-immigrant referendum that failed to attract enough voters to pass. Despite all this, or perhaps because of all this, Fidesz remains very popular. Indeed, its favorability went up in October to 49%. The entire opposition, Socialists, Greens, Liberals, musters only a little over 30%. Fidesz has faced more competition from the far-right party Jobbik. But by moving steadily toward the far right itself, the ruling party has stolen the thunder of Jobbik. Lesson for the United States. Don't underestimate corrupt opportunists who have no hesitation about courting extremists to stay in power. The liberal left in Hungary fragmented in the wake of the Fidesz's victory, allowing the ruling party to focus on appealing to voters further to the right. Successful resistance requires unity and the broadest possible message. This is a very, very important precedent to look at as relates to where America is positioned to go. The position for America is to go to that extreme right particular ideology. Now, there have been disassociations even from the mouth of Richard Spencer, who was the founder and the chair of the National Policy Institute, which is the alt-right's pretty much thought or think tank. He has said that the likes of Steve Bannon is not a member of the alt-right. Now, this is what he said, but we know that there's still some very affinite type of relations that can really be struck and tied in to the overall perspective. And they're very optimistic of the opportunity to actually appeal and even have influence on policies and legislation that this particular administration can put forth. All right. I want to read one more example in this particular article. And it's coming from the country of Poland. And this is a Christian crusade movement that they have there, a political movement. Last year, they say the Law and Justice Party, the PIS, or Law and Order, which Trump trumpeted throughout his campaign, the PIS party in Poland took control of the presidency and the parliament, delivering a decisive blow against both the center-right Liberal Party and the former communists. It has moved quickly to implement its pro-Christian and anti-EU policies. Now, this is where Mike Pence comes into the equation for the United States. He is a Christian supremacist. In my last broadcast, which was on Shabbat, you can actually see how there's an article by Jeremy Scahill from The Intercept that says that Pence is positioned himself to be the most powerful Christian supremacist in American history. And so we can see that there's a lot of alignment shaping up between Europe and America. And so we have to really see what's taking place, all right? The consolidation of power by PIS, which again is the Law and Justice Party, is through the media, the public prosecutor, and the Constitutional Court has challenged democratic norms and even elicited a rebuke from the EU. Last spring, Brussels demanded that the Polish government walk back its authoritarian steps. Warsaw said no. We're going forward full steam in this. All right. The EU, it seems, doesn't seem to have any bite to back up its bark. One senior Polish diplomat said, and we know that the Poles were a huge, they had the Lisbon Treaty, I believe it was. Now, that's in Portugal. But I do believe it was over the Lisbon Treaty that the Poles were refusing to enter into the EU. And they were like, we're not dealing with this. And so we see now an even more bold stance that they're taking to not enter into the EU and not even follow the rebuke of the EU. So this is very interesting in how this is developing as well. So again, one senior Polish diplomat said that the recent EU-US elections only strengthen the Polish government's resolve. I'm confident President Trump will not want to be involved in this whole discussion. We understand that Trump shares our concept of sovereignty. He doesn't care about others' internal issues, except where there are some interests in financial investments that are at stake. That leaves the task of resistance to Poles themselves. Women have mobilized against the government's plan to ban all abortions. Teachers have demonstrated against the government's efforts to change school curricula to reflect patriotic values. A new civic movement, KOD, is attempting to build the broadest possible front against the government, but PIS remains far more popular than the opposition. Tying together all the new right-wing populist movements is their trumpeting of Christian values. One of the first changes that Fidesz made to the Hungarian constitution was to insert a phrase that recognizes the role of Christianity in preserving nationhood. The Catholic Church is a major backer of PIS in Poland. Bookmark, notate, Keep that in your pocket because we're going to come back to the Catholic Church and the religious community proved a key supporter of Trump. In a talk that he gave via Skype at a conference at the Vatican in 2014, alt-right guru Steve Bannon, now they're saying he's alt-right in some circles. Again, Richard Spencer is saying he's not alt-right. But look at the ideology again. But he says and identified 3 civilizational challenges: crony capitalism, creeping secularism, and jihadist Islamic fascism. He says those are the 3 civilizational challenges. And what he means by that is the struggle for hegemony, the struggle for imperialism. Is it going to be more of an industrialist, capitalist industry or civilization? Is it going to be a secularist civilization, or is it going to be a Islamicist civilization? What is going to be the particular thrust? And those are the challenges that must be overcome, he says. He was hard-pressed to decide which was worse, Islam or secularism, but he was very clear about the stakes. He says, quote, "We're at the very beginning stages of a very brutal and bloody conflict. The very beginning," he says, "of which, if the people in this room, the people in the church, do not bind together and really form what I feel is an aspect of the church militant, to really be able to not just stand with our beliefs, but to fight for our beliefs against this new barbarity that's starting, that will completely eradicate everything that's been bequeathed over the last 2,000 to 2,500 years." End quote. Bannon and his co-religionists are imagining nothing short of a new crusade against Muslims and secularists. I describe the outlines of this effort in my book, Crusade 2.0, but that was when these forces were still on the fringes. They have now moved front and center. We're going to see Albert Pike, Giuseppe Mazzini, Lord Palmerston, and Otto von Bismarck's vision of the Third World War brought to fruition within these next 4 years. You can undeniably seal it. This is everything on the board right now. The key players are in place, all right? I'm just going to hold off on this article right here because I think that's a very good place to stop. Let me actually read this lesson for the United States. It says, "Beware the Trump administration's appeals to Judeo-Christian values and think twice about working with the administration on economic programs. Trump will likely try to peel off Democratic Party support for some domestic programs, which will blunt the overall effort to resist the administration's appeal. It's one thing not to oppose sensible economic programs. It's quite another to collaborate with the administration on their implementation." All right. Very interesting article from Foreign Policy in Focus by John Pfeffer, entitled "One More Time, What Europe Can Teach Us About Trump." And this is, again, Hebrew Vision Live. Mikhail Corbin-Yahu, your host this evening. This show is entitled "Two to the Dome." We're going to be having Truth Minister Paul Scott here live with us in about a half hour. And right now we're just covering some current events and really connecting the dots as relates to this election year and the selection of the Electoral College selection of Donald J. Trump. Want to just go to this next article that I found from the African Executive. Very interesting article. It was published also on November 23rd this year. It's called U.S. Elections. The World is Missing a Point. This is written by Sam Detshego. Okay? He starts out saying, this is a very interesting article, by the way, with his appeals and his warnings and his questions to the South African media that were ignored. But just check out some of the points he raises. He says the U.S. elections have come and gone, but the world is missing a point, especially the South African media. Now, of course, this is all relative to his perspective. So in South Africa, he's seeing this is not being covered. The truth of the matter is not being covered. Same thing in America, because these are the same international families that own the media in all these countries. So I have a very serious problem with the way the mainstream South African media, both print and electronic, portray U.S. elections and their approach to other global issues in general. Yes, they want to be taken seriously. The South African media should shoulder the blame for keeping their readers, viewers, and listeners ignorant by design or inadvertently. Same thing in the United States. There is Sakina Kamwendo's morning SAFM radio show, which featured visiting Wits professor John Strimlaw on 2 consecutive days to give a preview of and an analysis on the U.S. elections. I sent 2 short emails to Sakina Kamwendo's show to ask Professor Strimlaw about the Bilderberg Group and the Council on Foreign Relations, which play a major role on who becomes U.S. president. A day after the announcement of the U.S. election results, I sent another short email to Kamwendo asking her how she felt inviting a white person twice in a row without inviting even a single African American to give a preview and analysis of U.S. elections. All my emails were ignored. And this is important because we need our perspective. We need our sentiment. We need our ideas. Because we've been programmed and brainwashed with the ideas of a people who historically have been adversarial to us. So to receive their ideas and reflections on matters does not benefit us. Now, it is good for us to be aware of and to be mindful of and to know what is being said. But in terms of getting a voice that we can listen to and receive as a voice of reason, as a voice of wisdom even, we need our own voices. And this is why Hebrew Vision has decided to come on the air to present a voice that our people can receive and listen to and investigate and prove whether or not the spirit of it is in truth and in love. And this is what Hebrew Vision is on the air for. He goes on to say the Bilderberg Group and the CFR can't be ignored. So his emails were ignored. He says, but the Bilderberg Group and the CFR can't be ignored in U.S. politics. I would even say geopolitically. Although Donald Trump is not known to have attended meetings of these secret private organizations, he has connections to the most powerful and wealthy families in the U.S., Europe, and the Vatican. That explains why he won the elections. He is by no means an outsider, as he has invariably been portrayed. Trump, who declined to say whom he talks to about foreign affairs, held a private briefing last summer with Richard N. Haas, the president of the Council on Foreign Relations. A spokeswoman for Mr. Haas, Iva Zorek, revealed. Ms. Zorek added that the Trump-Haas meeting was held in August. There is no way any person in the U.S. can become president without being a member of one of these secret societies and or private organizations. The same applies to almost every European country. Trump was educated by the Jesuits, a very powerful Catholic religious order. The U.S. is playing second fiddle to the Vatican for those who are not aware. That pretty much explains his ascendancy to the presidency of the United States of America. The night after the U.S. presidential debate, around 19 or the 20th of October, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton attended an annual Jesuit dinner. All the heavyweights of the New World Order, such as Henry Kissinger, were in attendance. Kissinger is a member of the CFR and Bilderberg Group and attended this year's Bilderberg Group meeting in June in Dresden, Germany. There are many theories advanced by various schools of thought as to why Trump won and Hillary Clinton lost. Some say the people of the U.S. were tired of Hillary Clinton and that Donald Trump represented a breath of fresh air. But a choice between Trump and Clinton was not a choice at all, especially for African Americans whom Clinton described as super predators. I saw a comment on, actually it was this woman on, I believe it was CNN. She said, I don't have anything else to lose here after the night of November 8th when Trump was selected. She said, this is white supremacy's last dance. And I'm like, lady, for real? Either way it went, if Clinton got in office or if Trump got in office, the status quo of Western civilization, white supremacy, would have continued. It would have continued. It didn't matter who got in office. And this is exactly what he's saying right now. A choice between Clinton and Trump was not a choice at all, especially for African Americans, okay? Others say Bernie Sanders was a better candidate than both his Democratic Party rival Clinton and Republican Party rival Trump. However, all these candidates do not control the electoral process. These are all mind games. The popular vote means nothing, as you saw in this past election. U.S. elections are heavily manipulated. The electoral process is controlled by the 1% that controls America's wealth. It does not matter which candidate is or is not a front-runner or becomes president of the United States. There are those powerful people who pull the strings behind the scenes which the media ignores. That is why it is absolutely important to focus on secret private organizations such as the Bilderberg Group and CFR. The latter's equivalent in Britain is the Royal Institute of International Affairs. And you cannot forget the Club of Rome as well. However, the Vatican towers above all of them, which explains Trump's ascendancy to the U.S. presidency even when he wasn't attending Bilderberg Group meetings. Eric John Phelps' book, Vatican Assassins, also his website is entitled that. He is also a white nationalist, though, but he has views that are very akin to the revelation of who modern Babylon is, the Great Whore. Okay, very interesting there. But the name of the book is Vatican Assassins, Wounded in the House of My Friends. Best illustrates how powerful the Vatican is in the global scheme of things. There is a paucity of the critical points raised in this article in the South African mainstream media and the world's media in general, of course. This information will never be found in all South African weekly and daily newspapers, not even radio and television. The reader's best bet is to get a copy of The Patriot if they want to get as close as possible to understanding U.S. and global power dynamics. Implications of a Trump victory for Africa and the SADC. Has Africa in general, and Southern Africa in particular, fared any better under any U.S. president in history? There are some people, such as former South Africa's Deputy President Phumzile Mlambo Ngcuka, who lament the fact that Hillary Clinton lost, therefore it is a blow to women. Others have mixed feelings on Trump. Maite Nkoana Meshabane, South Africa's Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, was quoted as having said that the South African government was not concerned about who becomes U.S. president. Botswana's King, Ian Khama, registered his concern about Trump's reckless utterances and shuddered to think what would happen if Trump became president. Mlambo Ngcuka might have forgotten about what Hillary Clinton said after Colonel Muammar Gaddafi was lynched and assassinated. She said, "We came, we saw, he died," and chuckled. No, she cracked up. She wasn't chuckling, she was rolling. Does she lament that an insensitive person like that lost an election? And this was South Africa's deputy president under former President Thabo Mbeki. Nkoana Meshabane's stance is diplomatic and logical, with no strings attached. She has learned from her previous faux pas when she said unpalatable things about Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe. Big up Robert Mugabe. Khama's trepidation is understandable given Trump's penchant for saying unsavory stuff, such as what was attributed to him that Africa should be recolonized for another 100 years. In February 1994, the CFR also called for the recolonization of Africa in their mouthpiece known as Foreign Affairs. And you can see them battling it out with China right now, and as AFRICOM has put its talons and its claws into the continent as well. Some people may fault Khama's government for not having congratulated Trump yet on his victory as being petty. But how on earth does one congratulate a person who calls for the recolonization of Africa? You just don't do that. It's like there's no peace for the wicked. You don't give the wicked passes and greet them with words of peace. You let the wicked be, and you rebuke them and expose them. The fact of the matter is that all U.S. presidents are one and the same, irrespective of whether they are Democrats or Republicans. They follow U.S. foreign policy hook, line, and sinker. As some of their leaders said, the U.S. has interests, not friends. This world is about a fight for resources. It is not about benevolence. If one reads Kissinger's National Security Memorandum 200, it talks about killing people for their resources in the developing world. NSM 200 was declassified in 1990. Check that out. I'll link it to this particular broadcast here where you can go and access it yourself. So why do people like Mlambo Ngcuka and her ilk think that the U.S. is setting up AFRICOM military bases on strategic parts of the African continent with the acquiescence of some African stooges who call themselves leaders. The aim is to exploit Africa's mineral resources. It has been revealed in Hillary Clinton's leaked emails that Gaddafi was killed for his country's gold stocks, which were in tons. Moreover, Libya's central bank under Gaddafi's government was 100% locally owned. Huge. So the people all U.S. presidents such as Trump work for do not relish a country whose central bank is not under Europe's banking families such as the Rothschilds. It has emerged that Trump was very close to the Rothschilds. All the central banks in the world except North Korea are owned by the Rothschilds. During one of their debates, Trump told Hillary Clinton that if he became president, she would be in jail. Now that he is going to be U.S. president, she ain't getting no jail time. It has been said that Trump was not an insider. Let us also wait until January to see if he is not going to appoint some of his cabinet from the members of the CFR. He's not draining the swamp, he's replenishing it. Africa should be wary of signing free trade agreements like the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act, which South Africa was hurriedly forced to sign after being given a 3-month ultimatum. AGOA has expired. This has serious implications for South Africa's sovereignty and the SADC countries. Loose cannons like Trump are roped into the presidency of the U.S. in order to fulfill the objectives of the dominant global players. Trump is capable of doing anything without batting an eyelid. To confirm if a person belongs to these groups, one has to observe their hand gestures. They believe in a new world order which is going to be enforced through coercion and violence. It was clear from his October Jesuit dinner speech that he is part of the New World Order crowd when he said, "We must come together, not only as a nation, but as a world community." But this is not for everybody, because I want to read my last article in light of that before we get on the phone with Brother Minister Paul Scott, who's warming up. As I'm just sending him some text now. That this is, again, a Western imperialist design. Okay, and it's centered in identity politics, something that I've been covering very, very, very closely, going back a few months and looking at this presidential election, and the campaigns that led up to the election. Identity politics was used on both sides of the equation, and the identity politic that is now at the forefront of this entire matter in the aftermath is that of white supremacy. And so this last article before we get my brother Paul Scott on the phone is Donald Trump won, but white supremacy won't win forever. This is by an individual by the name of Julianne Malvo. Okay, this is from the African Globe. She says, "I began election night with exuberance. I was among the many who forecast a Hillary win." So first of all, all those perspectives of Hillary winning or Trump winning, as we just read, it didn't matter. So let's just keep that in mind as we read this. "The only disagreement among my circle was how big the Hillary rout would be. I thought she'd get at least 300 electoral college votes and hoped that she'd thump Donald Trump by getting as many as 340, holding him to less than 200 electoral votes." I mean, these people were really broken after the election. "The tables were turned and Trump was the one doing the thumping, with the electoral vote count estimated to be 290 to 228. Meanwhile, Hillary Clinton won the popular vote, garnering around 600,000 more votes than Trump. That's a whopping difference. But nonetheless, the people don't decide." That's the clear message. You don't decide squat. It's the Electoral College. We're going to do all the manipulation here. Right, folks, either way, one for the day. But now that Trump is much more aligned with a extremist perspective, though he's saying he's not, we'll see these policies. Because that's what you got to look at the end of the day. What are the legislation and the policies that are put into law under the administration. That's how you know how close to the people they are, or how far from the people they are, rather. So there was an amazing show of white solidarity. Trump took 58% of the white vote, but did not get a majority vote from any other racial or ethnic group. Only 8% of African Americans voted for Donald Trump. He did better among Asian Americans, 29%, and Hispanics, only 30%. White people repudiated Hillary Clinton and embraced Trump as one of their own despite his racist, misogynistic, and jingoistic rhetoric. Hillary Clinton counted on white women, especially college-educated white women, to save the day. Clearly, they were not with her. According to the Edison Research exit polls, Trump won 45% of college-educated white women and 62% of white women non-college graduates. Trump won 53% of the total white female vote. The college-educated white women's narrow vote for Clinton did not overcome the overwhelming support other whites gave him. White women valued culture and class over gender. Many of them are the mothers, daughters, sisters, or wives of the white men who gave Trump 63% of their vote. Hillary Clinton failed to energize the base or transcend the indifference that too many voters felt for her. Turnout was only 56.8%, just 1% higher than 2012 and lower than the 58.2% turnout in 2008. More than 95 million people who were eligible to vote didn't show up to the polls. 95 million. That's a number that can make some movements. You know, if it's really understood for those who are truly wanting to see a better America, you know, they can organize. 95 million people can put an entire movement in place if they so choose. And those are registered voters. We're not even counting those who aren't registered. So, something to think about for those who want to make America great again, truly. You got 95 people behind your back. 95 million people to move with. Organize. Which is, by the way, will be the theme of the upcoming Shabbat class that I will be presenting on. Organization. We need to organize as Israel. This is crucial. So the Republican vote was similar for Donald Trump and for Mitt Romney, the last Republican presidential nominee. Democrats turned out in much lower numbers for Clinton than they did for Obama. Why? Voter suppression is part of the answer. There were nearly 900 fewer voting places in 2016 than in 2012. Further, states like Wisconsin, which Hillary lost by less than a percentage point, introduced new voter ID laws between 2012 and 2016. Hillary Clinton lost by less than 2% of the vote in Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Florida. Let's go down, though. I don't want to read all that there. So, let's just get these last three paragraphs. It says, part of the ugly reality is the realization that too many of the fellow Americans or fellow citizens have embraced racially this divisive candidate whose rhetoric has unleashed hateful speech and attitudes. The Detroit News reported that students in Oakland, Michigan, blocked pathways of Latino students coming to school shouting, "Build the wall." These children are emulating their elders, including the president-elect. The nonpartisan education news website, the 74million.org, has reported that election-related school violence is on the rise in the wake of the Trump victories. Now, 8-year-old boy had a concussion and a broken arm after coming to his sister's defense by boys in the playground who were throwing the mulch at him. They found it necessary to take it into their hands to go and break the boy's arm. Of course, he was a little black boy, a little African-American, quote unquote, and gave him a concussion. 8 years old. You also had an adult kill a teenager in the street just for looking at him. Will Davis was lynched in California, in Richmond, California, by 3 white supremacists who, of which 2 are on the loose still. And so you're seeing the exacerbation of this. And of course, the media is just, doing a great job at amplifying it. Because what the people need to understand, at the end of the day, we are not each other's enemy. The working class is not each other's enemy. But I will say this, if your spirit is not in Torah, and walking according to the ways of Mashiach, well, then you have made yourself an enemy of righteousness, of truth, of the Most High. And there will be ramifications to that. Continuing this article, though. Donald Trump was able to tap into the angst that too many whites felt during the Obama presidency, and he was able to win the presidency in the name of white solidarity and white supremacy. It seems incongruous that a rich, privileged, urban businessman should become the voice of the working class disgruntled, the rural neglected. Trump got 62% of the rural vote and white women. But this is the new reality, the triumph of white privilege and hate rhetoric. Whites are just 40% of the population in California, a state that gave Hillary Clinton 61.5% of its vote. And the census reports that by 2044, there will be no majority group in our nation. White folks might as well enjoy Trump while they can, but time and demographics are on our side. White supremacy won't reign forever, especially in light of the global population. African people, which Israel is a part of which there are 1 billion Africans now on the African continent. You have over 100 million in Brazil alone. You have over 40 million on the North American continent, particularly in the United States. That alone is 1 billion African people on the planet, and we found ourselves still at the bottom of the totem pole. Well, that is because we're not organizing. We need to organize in order to understand how to empower ourselves. And it is a truth that our empowerment will be humanity's empowerment, because we, as a people, are not as cynical. We are not as war hungry and thirsty, bloodthirsty as our European counterparts. This is not our heritage. This is not our nature. When you come to the nature of African people, we are very, very hospitable, civil, domesticated, cultured, peaceful, sharing. I mean, these are hallmarks of who we are as African people. Not to say that our existence has been perfect. We've had corruption, yes. But typically, our societies have balanced that. Our societies have caused empires. And I mean empire in the sense that, yes, they had swaths of land, but the empire was established in righteousness. It was established according to, like, justice. Those empires, speaking of like the Ashanti, the Mali, the Zulu, the Igbo even, the Bantu, when you look at these peoples, and you look at their kingdoms, the Ethiopian kingdom, of course, they have conflicts now, but a lot of these conflicts were exacerbated during the colonial eras. Prior to that, people like Thomas Paine himself said that Africans were averse to war. They were very industrious. They were experts in husbandry, in agriculture. And they lived peaceably before they were debauched with liquors and the slave trade. This is from the mouth of Thomas Paine when he's speaking about African slavery and the European pirates and the merchants of the slave trade that profited from the kidnapping and trafficking of African peoples. So again, here you're listening to Hebrew Vision Live. We're going to be going live very shortly with Truth Minister Paul Scott out of North Carolina. I personally wanted to just kind of put some things into perspective for us as we went over 3 particular articles, what Europe can teach us about Trump And then we talked about the U.S. elections. The whole world they're missing the point. They're not seeing that whoever got into office, the same agenda is going to be carried out. But this one is going to be much more efficient, much more effective. And then finally, we talked about Donald Trump won, but white supremacy won't win forever. We have to understand that there are even European and Caucasian people who are tired of the ignorance and the hate that is being spewed out of the mouth of both babes and adults who identify and classify as white. And the foolish thing is, there's only one race. And I will say this repeatedly. Humankind is the only race that there is on earth. But in this race, you have two seeds. And this is according to Genesis 3. And let me read this before we get Truth Minister Paul Scott on the line. I want to read this. This is very important for us to understand. This is Genesis 3. I'm going to go to verse 14 and verse 15. It says, Yah Elohim said to the Nachash, to the serpent, to the beguiler, to the deceiver, to the whisperer, to the conjurer, to the evil one, to the adversary, to the devil. Because you have done this, you are cursed more than all livestock and more than every beast of the field. On your belly you are to go and eat dust all the days of your life. And I can get into a lot of that, but that's not the point I wanted to get into. The point I want to get into is verse 15. And I put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He shall crush your head, and you shall crush his heel. So, humanity is composed of only one race. But in that race, you have two seeds. And this is important to understand. You have the seed of the woman, the seed that comes from the womb of a woman whose spirit is in tune with the Most High. Then you have the seed of the serpent, which is the seed that is separated from the Most High. The reptilian brain, the cold-blooded reptilian brain that thinks of nothing more than survival and the primal instincts. Whereas the woman's seed becomes the mind that transcends that. And it elevates its vibrations back to the womb of consciousness. And that will crush the head or the skull of the serpent, which is what Yahushua did on Golgotha. And gave us the circuitry and the access to have that same power with the Most High in us. These are the things that we're not taught about, that we have to come into the understanding of, in the position, in the authority of, in Yah's name, to walk as Yah would have us to walk. And to have power over these scorpions and serpents that he put under our feet in the beginning, when he gave us the power to subdue the earth. But how we do that is with righteousness. Again, this is Hebrew Vision, live. I'm your host, Michael Corbin Yahu, the End Time Scribe. About to see if Brother Minister Paul Scott is available. If I can get him on the line and see what he got going on and let you all know how he's doing. Give me one moment as I'm getting the call set up. I'm going to have to try and call him back shortly. Right now, he's not answering the phone, but he is texting me, or he has texted me, and he is ready for the call shortly. But I'm just going to give him a few more minutes, and prayerfully we can get him on the line and go to the dome with Truth Minister Paul Scott. Try this one more time, so just Be patient with me, please, as we get the Truth Minister on the line. We will continue this broadcast of Two to the Dome very shortly. All right, so he is not answering his phone right now. What I do want to do is just take a little audio break, play a track or two, and let you all vibe out to some music, some good Hebrew music, before we get the minister on the phone. I want to play a few tracks that I got on here. We're going to play this track here.
There's a war going on the other side of my door. Here in Babylon. There's a war going on the other side of my door. Here in Babylon. It's time to get out. It's time to get out. It's time to come out of her. It's time to get out. It's time to get out. It's time to come out of her. Straight to the promised land where the blessed son of man walked in our promised land. There's blessings waiting for us there if we start trusting in his word. We keep stored up in our hearts so we can know the difference between what's light and what's dark. Because the ark is waiting in Israel in these the days of Noah, when truth shall fully be unveiled and love finally takes over the world, which is run by Satan straight from Vatican City, where he's preparing for Armageddon, working mysteries as iniquity man is about to get gritty. There's a war going on the other side of my door. Here in Babylon. There's a war going on the other side of my door. Here in Babylon. It's time to get out. It's time to get out. It's time to come out of her. It's time to get out. It's time to get out. It's time to come out of her. Like a baby when it's born. 2 nation generations, we are holding on strong. We come after the disaster, we will finish, we replenish. All in order for say the Torah. Blessed, blessed, we are calling. The sirens going off. You hear it, we see it. They fear it, we breathe it. Stay focused, keep reading. My home is home to many. With my Aki's right beside me. With numbers, there is power. Israel must return to the body. And by that time, the incline of the chaos will grow rapid. These kids are so misled, just falling for it. Who gon' catch them? Their eyes are seeing worldly of the serpent's satisfaction. There's morning in the eve, molecule deceiving atom. The biggest transformation taking place that you can fathom. And when it comes to pass, it's too late, that mean it happened. Our babies wanna play and live in ordinary fashion. But in this wicked place, we can't allow it. They asking why we can't play, so we tell them. There's a war going on the other side of my door. Here in Babylon. There's a war going on the other side of my door. Here in Babylon. It's time to get out. It's time to get out. It's time to come out of her. It's time to get out. It's time to get out. It's time to come out of her. What's first shall be last, and what's last shall be first. This first was water, but what's last is fire to baptize the earth for rebirth and regeneration. Removing curses, abominations, and death, so we can say to the rock of ages belongs salvation. Upon the steps to Mount Zion, we will reign with the king, the conquering Lion of Judah. So watch the throne and kiss the ring, because the dream of America is quickly coming to an end, which is the consequence of an nation that's hard-hearted from living in sin, where men descend into darkness like heartless beasts who pray to feast on flesh, and the writings on the wall. Behold the destroyer who increases death with wars and rumors of wars, spilling blood that sheds on floors. It's Fahrenheit 9/11, so pray for Michael to come because there's more demons from the abyss with infected semen spreading wickedness. Blinded eyes with ignorance, which unfortunately many think is bliss as they miss the revelation and stand in need of correction. So with the 144,000 they can rise in the resurrection to perfection, stepping in the name of love, blessing the name from up above, for sending his anointed one who offered up his precious blood and atone for the wrong done for so long by rebellious children who were forced to leave their land to be afflicted by hellish villains, where our killings were second place, perpetrated by the seed of the state who takes every step to make sure his spells never break. But fate would have this wicked government right to a righteous judgment for breaking the eternal laws of our heavenly Father's covenant. Say loud.
Yes, sir. You just heard Rise Up Yahuda by my brother Gabriel out of KC, featuring yours truly, Mikhail Corbin Yahoo. But we got the brother minister, Truth Minister Paul Scott on the line. Can you hear me, brother Truth Minister?
I hear you loud and clear, brother. Shalom. Sorry for my tardiness.
Oh, it's all good, man. I'm glad to have you on board. It's been a minute, man. Alaikum shalom and to you and yours. How you been doing?
Doing well, sir. Most High bless.
I know you've been busy. I've been seeing you on the book. Let's start out with just a background. Let the listening audience know who Paul Scott is. Some people may not know who you are, but I want to bring you to Hebrew Vision Live so our audience can know who Brother Minister, Truth Minister Paul Scott is.
Yes, sir. I'm just a servant of the Most High, primarily. But actuality, well, in other ways, I'm a minister, activist, and journalist based in Durham, North Carolina.
Okay. So can you talk about some of your activist efforts that you've been known to bring forth to Durham and pretty much the world as well?
Yeah, I started with my activism back in 1992, I guess officially, doing local activism. But primarily after that, during the 90s, I began to focus on the malt liquor that was sold in the black community, predominantly in the black community, because, like they say, on every corner in the hood, you got a church, you got a liquor store. So I, came out of church, so I was focusing on the liquor store. So that is what I primarily focused on in the 90s. And then towards the end of, I was ordained in the Baptist church, was licensed in 96, ordained in 1998. But around 1999 or so, I started reading the teachings of Rabbi Ben Ami and God, the Black Man, and the Truth. And that really changed my whole theology. At that point, I began to, at one point I called myself an Afrocentric Christian. But then I said, well, Christianity is really a derogatory Roman term. So what would be the Hebrew equivalent? And of course, that's Messianic. So around 2002, 2003, I formed the Messianic African Nation Ministry. And, we've been going forth with that ever since. And, in the meantime, in between time, I've done a little hip-hop activism, taking the rappers to task for some of the negativity that they spread over the last 15 years. But more than that, the ones who control them, put focus on the ones who control the music industry. So that's my activism in a nutshell, brother.
Okay. And I think it's interesting because you spoke of being a journalist. To speak on that a little more, because I think that's really something that you've very well contributed to our struggle in terms of really holding a light to hip hop, and even a fire to it in order to really keep it true to what it is and just the conscious perspective of hip hop. Can you talk on what you've done with that a little more?
Yeah. Well, basically, let me start back with a little bit of my history.
Okay.
In Durham, there was a bookstore called the No Bookstore. And, in the 90s, you still had the brothers from the 60s and 70s. They were still trying to hold that position. We know this about the black struggle. Y'all young folks don't know anything. So the only lane left for me was hip-hop. They didn't know hip-hop. So I had them on the hip-hop thing. So I was kind of pigeonholed on the hip hop thing or the resident Afrocentric hip hop expert. So when I really started writing nationally
Mm-hmm.
in 1999, around 2000, it really started putting my stuff out thanks to the internet nationally, or I guess sometimes internationally. That was my focus, hip hop. I'm a child of the late 80s movement, the conscious, so-called conscious hip hop movement, and I've always been a fan of people like X-Clan and Carrot One, Professor Griff, Public Enemy. So what I try to do in my writings is bridge that gap between
Mm-hmm.
the conscious hip hop and the activism. So that is really why I started writing about hip hop, and I've contributed articles to, I would say, most of the black newspapers in the country. The Final Call, All Hip Hop, Ball Alert, EUR Web. I did a lot of work with them over the years.
Okay. And you've even been on Fox and CNN, right?
Well, I've been on Fox. I
Okay.
think my name has been on CNN, flashing across the screen for something. But actually, I've been on Fox and MSNBC. I've been on Fox about 5 times, I think, and
Okay.
MSNBC one time. I debated Coolio about Eminem back in 2001 on MSNBC. And some of these things you can still pull up on YouTube.
Okay. Okay. What was your experience like on Fox? I know you were with Sean Hannity. Was that what you were with, and Bill O'Reilly?
Now, it's Hannity. I actually,
Okay.
Bill O'Reilly told me I would never be taken seriously unless I denounced people like Barack out of New Jersey when I called him to his talk show. So I guess he meant it. So I was never on Bill O'Reilly's show, but I
Okay.
was on. I mean, one time I was invited, I got bumped by Run from Run DMC. But Sean Hannity, that's the show I was on. Handy and Combs at the time, and more recently, over the last, I think about 6 months ago, I was on Sean Hannity's radio show again.
Okay. And what would you say your experience was like on that show?
I mean, everything is about platforms, brother.
Okay.
And you're talking about 2004, I think that was the year I was up there about 4 times. Trying to get that platform, trying to put the message of the Messianic African nation out. Of course, it wasn't the best experience as far as the information I was about, trying to put forth. However, as far as being a platform and reaching millions and millions of people, I used it for that end. And I think I would say 4 out of the 5 experiences I left feeling pretty good about.
Mm-hmm.
The last one, not so much, because I know the last time I was on Fox, one thing you don't do on radio, and you do on radio, it's break away from what the topic. And the last time I was on Fox TV, it was right after Shaw. It was about this time of year because it was right after Sean Bell was murdered, and we were supposed to talk about something, and I broke script and started talking about Sean Bell. So that it got kind of ugly after that. But it's all about platforms, man. Trying to reach the masses, trying to reach the millions, and we grow and we learn from that.
Okay. So what is your focus right now? What are you trying to convey to our people right now?
Control your own hood. I mean, that's been my message for the last many years. Really focusing heavy for the last 3 years, especially. Whatever you do, whatever goes on across the world, control your own neighborhood. I've been really focused on my own city, Durham, North Carolina. High murder rate, teenage violence. More recently, as 2 days ago, the police shot a black man under questionable circumstances. So
unarmed? Was he unarmed?
Hard.
Was he unarmed?
And that's what they're debating.
Okay.
If anybody wants to look it up, just go under Durham, North Carolina, police shooting under Google. It's developing as we speak, brother.
Okay.
Of course, they said they found a gun, but there are a lot of inconsistencies as far as the story goes. They're doing a lot of good PR. I guess trying their best to keep it from going national. There are a allowing certain protests in the city to happen. So they're trying to, in my opinion, control the narrative. But if you really read those articles that are circulating about the shooting, you see a lot of inconsistency. So that's what I've been trying to do. But I've been trying to organize locally, organize people to protect their own community, whether it be black-on-black violence, Ku Klux Klan violence, police violence. What I've been really teaching real hard on the streets about is controlling your own community. And what we've been doing for the last 10 years actually. We've adopted a block in Durham, and every Sunday we go out to that block and pass out snacks. We were passing out DVDs and CDs, but now we're passing out books for the last 2 years. 2 years. We've been passing out Black History books, so that's going real well. We call it our street institution.
That's dope.
Street institution.
That's dope. And I was gonna ask, what kind of things are you actually doing where the rubber meets the road? Like, what besides? Are there any other activities that you're engaged with as far as putting on presentations or anything to the local community? In addition to giving out the books and the snacks.
Well, I mean, that's what I do. I mean, it's more than just handing out the books as people walk by.
Right.
It's a teen territory, so we actually do impromptu lectures. I'm still not on the lecture circuit. Nobody wants to invite me to their city, so I said, okay, fine, I'll just lecture on my own street where I could be most effective. I'm not averse to going to other cities, but that's not something that I really push. I would if I was invited. However, I'm always going to have my block books. I will. So I just, as I pass out the books to the brothers and sisters walking by, being that I've read so much of the material, I'm actually able to teach them as they walk by and try to get them involved in some of the ministries that we have going on.
Okay, deep. I actually pulled up from WITN, their website, and they actually released the name of the 34-year-old who was murdered by the police. His name was Frank Nathaniel Clark. And I see here they say that Michael said that the Clark, and Michael was Cami Michael, the police spokeswoman. She said that Clark was African American, as are the 3 officers who were involved in the shooting. Is that something that has been discussed in Durham, North Carolina?
Yeah, I mean, it is
complex.
Since I do not have the actual document in front of me,
right,
I really can't speak on whether all 3 of them were identified as black in the initial story. I saw that 2 out of 3, but like I said, I have to go back and research. But yes, at this point, they're pointing towards 3 African American officers, and actually 2 of them have been accused in the past of what do you call it? Not harassing, but excessive brutality or whatever you call it on TV.
Right,
yeah.
right. So what's been the basic relationship of Durham and the police department in Durham and the community, the black community? What's the basic temperament like there before this?
Well, because Durham is so, I guess you're dealing with at least half African American. The politicians really tread very carefully when you're dealing with that greater black population. So we don't really have that many problems. This was probably the first questionable police shooting in recent memory, as far as where it's questioned. So this is kind of new territory for us. It just happened Tuesday night. I know the family had a march to the police station yesterday.
Okay.
But it's still unfolding as we speak. Probably be some more happenings tomorrow as we sort through as a community, as we begin to sort through some of the statements, what was supposed to happen. I'll give you one example. They're saying that he was reaching, one story is that he was reaching for his waistband, then the officers heard a shot, and then they put 8 rounds in him. So the question that thinking people would say is, okay, if you shot him for reaching for his shot come from?
Right.
There are little inconsistencies like that that are floating around.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the police chief has talked a lot about surveillance. So we are beginning to raise the question about, okay, what is your surveillance operation in these communities? Because as an activist, when you start talking about you're doing intel and surveillance,
right,
as an activist, my mind goes back to COINTELPRO.
and that's privacy concerns, right?
Yes, sir. Because that raises especially in this whole era of taking back America, tough on crime, Black Lives Matter. When you say you're doing intelligence in a community, I'm asking, am I in that foul? Because civil disobedience or the potential for civil disobedience is still a crime. Therefore, it could be under the jurisdiction of intelligence gathering.
Right.
So my question would be, if you have this intelligence gathering information, where is the line? Are you looking for the drug dealers? Or are you looking for activists who may incite some kind of riot? Yesterday, people were asking where all these helicopters coming from. So I've noticed in Durham over the last year or so, a lot of times when they expect any kind of
uprising,
the helicopter flying overhead.
Really? Interesting.
I mean, immediately.
Right.
So that probably has a lot to do with the intel. Before the protests even get there, the helicopters are already out.
So besides the protests and the march, have there been any uprisings or any unrest in Durham, or has it been pretty civil despite that incident?
It's been civil because the police chief now is good with PR. Had it been the previous police chief who had to leave, had to resign a couple of months ago, if it had been him, it would have been a whole different story, brother. But this new police chief, African American lady out of Atlanta, good with PR, knows how to work a camera, knows what to say, but not to say. That's the type of situation we're dealing with yet. So now, tomorrow's a slow news day. Anything happening tomorrow is so-called Black Friday. So on a slow news day, you never know who's going to pick up the story and run with it on a national level. So stay tuned.
All right. You're listening to Hebrew Vision Live. We're here with Brother and Truth Minister Paul Scott. Two to the Dome is what we're calling this with Truth Minister Paul Scott. If there are any questions from our listening audience, you're more than welcome to call in. You can call us in on Skype at Hebrew Vision, or you can send a tweet to the same handler on Twitter at Hebrew Vision. And we're here live with Truth Minister Paul Scott. So I know you've been paying attention to this presidential election. What are your, just aware of it at least, you know what I'm saying, and what's been going on, as far as the aftermath and everything, at least, we'll get to all that. But first and foremost, what is your reflection on the selection, I like to say, of the incumbent president, Donald Trump?
Well, I'm 49 years old, brother. And when people were saying that Trump didn't have a chance, my thing was always, remember Ronald Reagan? 1980, they were saying the same thing about Ronald Reagan. Yeah, he was governor of California, but that was because of his personality, his so-called good hair or whatever. He was basically a B-rated actor, on the B-list actor. So people weren't really giving Ronald Reagan a chance. And he reformed the whole Republican Party.
Right.
So, and still, his legacy still vibrates through the Republican Party. He was old. At that time, he was, I think, the oldest president elected. He was old. People say he was senile, especially towards the end of his presidency. But yeah, he still got elected. So I saw the same thing with Donald Trump. I said, well, our people in general, they're moved by charisma.
Right.
And if any of your listeners have studied post-Reconstruction, you're dealing with the same scenario. You've had a black man, even though what he has actually done for black people is questionable.
Right.
But you have a lot of white people who think just that rebellious spirit, the need to rebel, the need to do something, somebody who could talk tough and put the black folks in their place. I think that was underestimated. Also, I think that the Democratic Party lost touch somewhere with
Mm-hmm.
black America. I think they thought that we would be so enamored with Obama, we would automatically go vote for Hillary. They don't know, they underestimated dissatisfaction in the black community
Mm-hmm.
who were expecting miracles, who were expecting the promised land, who were expecting their life would be so much different than it was 8 years ago. And for many of us, our lives have either gotten worse or remained the same.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I agree with
And I
that.
think also, brother, I think fear politics. I think there's just so much fear politics you can use. The big bad boogeyman is going to do this and that and the third, and they're going to be gunning black people down in the street if Trump is elected. But then, even those who aren't versed in politics look back and say, well, look what happened under Obama.
Mm-hmm.
Where was the black man in the White House really standing up forcefully, like he did the LGBT or whatever community? Where was that voice when Trayvon was murdered? Where was that voice when Mike Brown was murdered? Where was this strong activist president that was supposed to lead us into the promised land? And actually, if you look at his conversations in the media regarding black folks, it was always something negative, always kind of like the dude who moves out the hood and makes it big, and he turns around and starts pointing his finger at the brothers he left behind, going, now, behave. If
Right.
you look at his most forceful statements weren't made at um, they weren't made at the right wing. They weren't made at the Newt Gingriches and the Sean Hannitys and that crew. His most striking statements were made at Kanye West.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. Yep. So, what direction do you see the country going now? Of course, with all the backlash of, or the white lash, I've heard it called, from the angry Caucasian male, the working class, the rural, in America. What direction do you see America taking right now?
And that is a good question, brother, because to be honest with you, I have been so focused on being local.
Mm-hmm.
What is my community going to look? What is my community going to look like in the future? Because when we focus locally, we have a lot more control over local
I agree.
than we have now. They say all politics is local. All politics is local. So I think in the black community, we're going to have no choice but to make sure all communities are straight, regardless of what happens in Washington.
Mm-hmm.
If we control the school board, the county commissioners, the city council in our communities, and also organize on the streets and stop our brothers and sisters from killing each other, we're going to be all right.
That's crucial.
Because this is something we didn't do under Obama.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't do that under Obama. We just thought that everything was going to flow down from Washington and it would be a trickle down type situation. But so we didn't really focus on local politics. So I think Trump is going to focus, as they say, hunker down locally and try to make sure we're all right. But nationally, brother, it's scary. It's real scary because I'm looking at the pictures of his wife on the internet, and I'm thinking about, okay, you in America, people might think it's cute, but how does that play off in other countries across the planet? How does that play off in the Arab world?
Right.
How does that play off in China? How does it play off in Korea when you see the first lady having seductive pictures on the internet?
Yep. Yep.
So it's scary, brother. As they say in the church, these are praying times.
I agree. Have you heard anything of the alt-right or Richard Sherman and NPI, National Policy Institute? Are you somewhat aware of their expression of exuberance over the election of Donald Trump as far as promoting the white nationalist perspective? What's your take on that? Even if you're not aware of it, what's your take on the white nationalist movement?
Yeah, I'm very aware of it, brother. And I've been studying the alt-right. I consider us the alt-black. So, maybe we need to brand that in the face of the alt-right.
Great point.
But yeah, I've been really studying that movement. And, I have to in North Carolina. The Klan is planning a march next week to celebrate Donald Trump in North Carolina. The same Klan branch that had the march in Charleston, South Carolina last July before last actually. They're going to do a march in North Carolina next week. So white nationalism has always been white nationalism. I think now it's more blatant, but I hope that the old adage is that nothing brings people together more than a common enemy will ring true. Maybe with this new alt-right, maybe the violence in Chicago will simmer down. Maybe when people start seeing that Klan rise up, maybe they'll think twice before they kill another black man. I don't know.
So talk about that alt-black, and I'm thinking maybe alt-Israelite, alt-Hebrew, thrust myself, and really looking to, and I think that there should be some counter voice that we should have as a people, particularly the Israelites. I think there needs to be a certain voice that we have internationally, because one thing about the alt-right, I'm sure you're aware of, is their connection with Europe. I mean, they are pan Anglos, you know what I'm saying? Really, just pan European, and looking at the movement. And I'm not saying that's necessarily and inherently a bad thing, but we know the history of said pan European movements and imperialist hegemonies, right? Cultural hegemonies and things of that nature. What do we need to do in light of that? And I think that's a very important point that you brought up, to have an alt-black, something like that. But what do you see? Because I know you're very visionary in how you move.
Well, I think that if they're doing white nationalism, we really have to discuss black nationalism. Because in all its aspects of black nationalism, besides the tribalism that we often do, Nation of Islam, Hebrew Israelite, et cetera, we have to look at black nationalism as a historical, political movement in the world. That's the only way we're going to counter white nationalism with an understanding of black nationalism. But we've been so lulled to sleep when it comes to black nationalism. A lot of this generation, they don't know about it, because even before Obama, people were saying race doesn't matter anymore. Post-racial really didn't start with Obama. People have been saying that since the 80s. The 80s was post-racial, if you remember that. If you spoke out against racism, except around 88 through 92, other than that, you were still doing a post-racial period where people thought we overcome. When they took down the whites-only water fountains, when they desegregated the schools, even I would say probably after the Civil War, and I'm sure during Reconstruction, all that was post-racial. So with this whole idea of white nationalism supposedly being mainstream again, what is going to be the response from black nationalism? Will it give black nationalism a platform? Because the alt-black does not have a platform. The Roland Martins, the Karen, what's her name, that has the talk show on Sirius Radio. They're not alt-black. They're mainstream black. So maybe the alt-black will get a platform, and I hopefully they will give the platform be used by those who actually study, who talk with facts, who talk clearly, and not with a lot of rhetoric and selling wolf tickets about stuff they know they ain't gonna do.
That's crucial. Very important insights there. I appreciate that. Yeah, man, it's so much that really just crosses my mind. In light of particularly the election and how we can go. And I think I want to pick up on your local um, efforts more. But how do we internationalize that? And let me even digress and go to this point here. Speaking of just understanding our vantage point, because with the alt right, we know America to them was built by and for whites, right? So they're really staunch on immigration. They're very very staunch on really even deportation of groups, undesirables. Of course, they're speaking of Mexicans a lot, but even there's been rumor of a back to Africa type of platform that may come up with Trump. What is your perspective on that? Do you think that our strength can be found in digging in deeper in America, or do you think that repatriating to Africa is a more viable political move for us? What's your view on that?
Well, if you talk about ultimate strength, brother, it is the Most High, being spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
The laws and the statutes, those are our strength. And if you being a Bible scholar yourself, you know that some of the, well, I would say most of the adversities that were placed on the Hebrew Israelites were for the purpose of making them adhere to the laws and statutes of the Creator.
Mm-hmm.
So, will that be a point where we have to do that? I would say yes, because we can do economics all day, we can do politics all day. They control that, but the one thing they don't control is spirituality.
Right.
So, will that make us spiritual? Because if we become more spiritual, all of this puts us on the right path. If we become more spiritual, if we begin to teach laws, statutes of the Most High, and ingrain that in our children, our families, our communities, we begin to do business with each other.
Mm-hmm.
We begin to love each other. We begin to stop killing each other. So the key is spirituality. Politically, it starts with spirituality, but as far as politically, it'll be getting your friends and neighbors instead of sitting home watching Scandal or whatever, Empire during the week. When there's a school board meeting, take at least 30 minutes to an hour to just show your face. If you can't stay for the whole meeting, just go in there and show your face, because a lot of these policies that are being made on a local level are based solely on who's in the room.
Mm-hmm.
I know in Durham, a lot of things that are happening with our school board is based solely because we were in the room. If we had not been in the room, it wouldn't happen. So if you can make changes with 10, 20, 30, 40 people, the more people you can get to go to a school board meeting or a city council meeting or a county commission's meeting, the better your community is going to be, point blank, period.
Okay.
And I'm thinking even as I was watching the march they did, I didn't participate, but a lot of people will try to downplay marching. We're tired of marching, but the science behind marching is a demonstration. And I want your listeners to listen to the word and really think clearly when they say demonstration, what they mean. When there's a march and they call it demonstration, it's supposed to show the powers to be. This is a demonstration of what we are capable of doing. This is not. It was never supposed to be the end. It was never supposed to be the end. It was only supposed to be. This is a demonstration showing you what we are capable of doing. Because the enemy knows that no matter how much you talk, no matter what you say on the internet, no matter how many, again, wolf tickets you sell about what you're going to do, if you can't get people
mobilized,
people in your state to do something simple as marching or walking, basically that's what it is. If I can't get 50 people to walk, the likelihood of me doing these damn things else is slim and none.
So it's the mobilization of the movement. We got to mobilize as well as organize.
Yeah, but the marching, that is a basic thing.
Right,
that's
I agree.
Low level activism.
No, I agree.
Low level, because all you're asking people to do is walk. It's not the 60s. It's not asking people to, protest and get dogs sicked on them and fire hose. All you're asking people to do is walk across they see, that's why they send the helicopters out. Because that's, okay, if this person get 1,000 people to walk down the street, what else can he get them to do?
That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, the old saying is the person who can start a riot, no, scratch. The person who can call off a riot can start a riot. So that's one of the theories they use. They'll look at somebody like an Al Sharpton, who has, made inroads into being the quote proverbial black leader. And they deal with people, his part, ace in the hole is always, look, if I can get 10,000 people to march, I can get those 10,000 people to riot.
Right. I see. Yep. They can get the people up and move. Yep. That's interesting. So locally, what type of strategies do you see being effective implementing in the community to insulate ourselves from some of the federal and even the nationalist, the white nationalist influence? What can we do to insulate ourselves?
Love. Go into the community and teach our people to love each other. No matter who. You can have the worst gang bangs of blood, crip, gangster disciple, whatever, in the community. The lowest common denominator is going to be love of his mother, sister, girlfriend, daughter. You have to tap into that.
Right.
If you can tap into and make it relevant, how this is affect his mother or his sister or his girlfriend or his wife or daughter, you got him. We have to break it down to the lowest common denominator. When I go into a community and I engage in blood, what is the lowest common denominator we can build on? And we start from there. That's where your conversation starts. My conversation isn't going to start with Marcus Garvey. My conversation isn't going to start with Malcolm X. I'm looking at this, but I'm like, okay, what is the lowest common denominator that we can reach, where we can build? Because if I start talking about, black nationalism that goes over his head, or I make him feel dumb or stupid, I've lost that battle.
Yeah.
But if he's in the 21 Savage, how can I use 21 Savage, the rapper 21 Savage, to build this conversation?
Become all things to all men.
Yeah. Because anything else, if my conversation with you is predicated upon your understanding of what I'm saying. If you're not understanding what I'm saying, if it's not reaching you, if it's not touching you, I'm wasting your time, I'm wasting my time. So we have to find that lowest common denominator and build from that.
That's wisdom. Definitely.
That's why my lowest common denominator is not the books on the block, it's the chips. The chips is the draw.
Okay.
The chips I give out, potato chips, Fritos, whatever, that is the draw to get the people. As I'm handing them a bag of snacks with my left hand, I'm giving them a book with my right hand. I have exactly what? I can stall them probably 30 minutes to get their attention as I'm reaching in the bag and handing them chips. So when I got my hand on the chips and they got their hand on the chips, that's the connection. That's that connection right there.
Right.
Then with my right hand, I reach, brother, would you be interested in this book? And I don't care, you can have the worst gangbanger in your city. He ain't gonna turn out a bag of potato chips. Not if he's hungry. And 9 out of 10, if he's walking back and forth the street, he don't walk 3 blocks, but been on the block all day, ain't ate. You give that brother a bag of potato chips, you a friend for life.
Right. You the brother on the block that gave me the chips. What's up, man?
Brother, look, they don't even know my name really on the block.
Right.
Because what I did was I stepped away from doing media for a bunch of years, probably about 8 years. When I was writing my articles, I really wasn't doing local media. And I definitely wasn't going to I've only brought cameras on the block a couple of times because, I got to show the people this is how it's done. But for the most part, there've been no cameras or anything.
Right.
So it really wasn't a need for me to even really tell them my name. They say, oh, there's Snack Man. There's the Snack Man.
Right.
And yeah, it wasn't until recently I started saying, okay, this is my name, this is what I'm doing. because I didn't want to go out there. That was their neighborhood. I don't live in that neighborhood. So, if they want to call me snack man, that was fine. Plus, it kept me below the radar.
Yeah.
So I'm organizing, as I'm building a power base and getting to know the people in the community that kept me below, on certain radar screens, if they only knew me as snack man.
Right. Right. That's deep. That's deep.
Because it was never about, my name. It was about doing,
The work.
Because, it was about doing the work. I mean, it's nothing really in that neighborhood they could do for me on a personal level that would even be benefit, that would make me care if they really knew my name or not, because I'm just providing a service. That's all.
Got you.
I wasn't trying to really build a great, organization on that block. It was about just touching the people, providing a service. So if they can identify with me as Snack Man, even the little children, hey Snack Man, that's fine.
Right. What has the response been as far as the protracted and concerted effort that you've done consistently? What has that done for the said communities that you've set on the corner and the block and handed out these snacks and books?
Yeah, most High blessed, man. It's been love.
Yeah.
The only headaches that we've gotten is from church folks.
Really?
What are you doing? Going over being nosy. I had a church van drive up one time. We out there. I think it was hot that day too. They drove up on the church van, parked the church van, and hollered out the window, "We're hungry." And they're coming from church in the church van, and me and my NYD comrade, we out there passing out snacks and eat. So, but as far as the people in the community, it's been nothing but love, man. I mean,
awesome.
A lot of people talk theoretically about what can be done in the community, what should be done. But when you're actually out there in the community with the people, engaging them on a consistent basis, same time, same place, at least once a week, you know what works and what doesn't work. When I first came out in that community, I spent probably about $230 on Messianic African Nation hats.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought they would go, and this is like probably 2 weeks of me being on the block. I thought it was going to go over real big. Brother, I gave out, 50 hats?
Mm-hmm.
And out of all those hats, all that money I invested, I only saw one elder wear the hat. All those hats I gave out.
Wow.
The rest of them probably took the chips, took the hat, and threw the hat away.
Wow. Do you think that they knew what the idea behind it meant, or what? Did you explain it to them?
No, I thought that the hat would be enough to start the conversation.
Okay.
Building Messianic African Nation as a ministry, I thought the hat would be people wearing the hat, and that would generate conversation and work that way, because I thought I could just go on the block and in a couple of weeks change the whole community. It took 6 weeks, brother. No scratch. 6 months before they would even talk to me. Now, as of, I would say after that 6-month period, and really after the first couple of years, now when I give out things, it has value. When I give out a T-shirt, it has value. When I give out a red, black, and green armband, it has value. Mm-hmm. Because I built that relationship. When I spent that $200 on those hats, it had no value there. No.
Right. No clue. I was reading an article. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Now they're rocking the new African Guard, Respect My City T-shirts. Can I get a T-shirt, brother? You got this, brother. You got this, but you got any more books, brother? But that relationship took. It was nowhere for 6 months. 6 months, it was like, okay, what's your hustle?
That's deep.
But 10 years after that, man, it's love and family.
Yes, sir.
I'm giving the Most High praise, because you don't get the Most High praise, that they could just turn south the next week. But until now, man, it's just been love.
That's beautiful.
Brother's been in prison and out of prison, and let's say you still on the block, brother. You were on the block before I went in prison, and you still out here.
That's crucial. Yeah. So I was reading an article on Modern Ghana, And they talked about, a leader has to make himself available so that, people can trust you so that you can, inspire them and create more leaders, and I think that's the thing. It said follow you, but I'm of the mind leaders create more leaders, I don't want someone following. I want someone to become who they're supposed to be and lead according to what the Most High has gifted them with. You know what I'm saying? We should definitely look to build up leaders, and I find that very commendable that you've done that. So here's my last question for you, because we're wrapping up this particular hour, and I want to thank you for your time. But what is on the horizon for the Messianic disciples of Yeshua or the Messianic African nation with Paul Scott? What can we expect to see from you?
Most High willing, book coming soon. I've almost finished the book I've been writing. I took a little time to start writing the book. So the book's coming, The Warning Shots Fired, the book. Most High willing, in the next couple of months, putting that together. But yeah, I'm looking at locally right now.
Okay.
There's some things that we've talked about previously that that is my ultimate goal. What we've talked about in the past, that's my ultimate goal.
No doubt.
That's going to be the ultimate goal. But right now is to do things locally. We have the Missing African Nation as a ministry, New African Guard trying to organize brothers and sisters to protect the community, and something called Stick Society to increase cultural knowledge. We've been going around giving out armbands, got a Facebook page, and trying to teach our people to learn their history. So that's what's next on the horizon.
That's what's up. So if somebody wants to get in contact with Truth Minister Paul Scott, what outlets do you have that they can get in contact with you?
My website is nowarningshotsfired.com. Twitter is @TruthMinister. And my number, 919-972-8305.
There it is. That's what's up. All right. So are there any closing shouts out that you may want to give? Any, parting thoughts that you want to share with before we go ahead and transition and close this hour out?
Well, brother, I just want to thank you for giving me this opportunity on your show. It's been an honor. But I always like to leave the benediction of the Messianic African nation. Although we have been victimized, yet we are not victims. We are a strong African people, and in the fullness of time, in the Creator's will, we shall rise again. As I leave you in peace. Shalom alaikum.
Alaikum shalom. Paul Scott, Truth Minister. I want to thank you again for coming on to Hebrew Vision Live and sharing what you're doing with your people in Durham, North Carolina. Our listening audience, I want to thank you. Yes, indeed. Hallelujah. Listening audience, I want to thank you all for tuning in. And be sure to tune in this upcoming Sabbath as we're going to continue in some of the organizing processes that we're going to be dealing with. To overcome. We want to organize to overcome. And also you can check out Hebrew Vision's blog spot, which is hebrewvisionnews.blogspot.com. You can check us out on YouTube at Hebrew Vision as well, Twitter, Hebrew Vision. And we'll be here next week as well to continue bringing this vision to our people. Closing prayer. Yikadal vayikadesh shamei rabah. Be'almadi barakirotei vayimelech malchutei. V'chayechunu v'yamichunu v'chaye dekol beit Yisrael. Bagalav vizman kariv. V'meru, amen. Yehei shmei rabba mavorach. Leolam ulmei almaya. Yit barak vayishtabach. V'yipa'ar v'yit roman v'yit naseh. V'yit adar v'yit alei v'yit halal. Shemei deku desha berechu. Le'ela min kol barakata v'shirata tush bechata v'nechmata. Damiran ba'ama. V'meru. Amen. I want to thank you all again for tuning in to Hebrew Vision Live. As we open, so shall we close. Let my people go. Panakia. Yahuda.